The film Miracle Landing was released in the United States in 1990. The film tells the story of an actual crash event of Aloha Airlines Flight 243, flying from Hilo to Honolulu, when a large section of the forward roof blew off, resulting in a terrifying explosive decompression. Yes, that sounds scary, but what happened to the plane to cause this sort of decompression? What happened to the passengers? Stick till the end of the video to find out more. Hello and welcome to Plane Crashes Explained, where we discuss some of the most mind-blowing reasons and facts behind the most heinous plane crashes. Subscribe to our channel and press the bell icon so you don't miss future updates. Without further ado, let's get straight into this. Aloha Airlines Flight 243 was scheduled from Hilo to Honolulu. On April 28, 1988, a Boeing 737-297 serving the flight sustained extensive damage due to explosive decompression in flight, but was able to land safely at Maui's Kahului Airport. Another 65 passengers and crew members were hurt. The significant damage caused by the decompression, the loss of one cabin crew member, and the safe landing of the aircraft established the incident as a significant event in aviation history, with far-reaching implications for aviation safety policies and procedures. It was a typical sunny day at Hilo International Airport, where Aloha Airlines Boeing 737-297, tail number N73711, Queen Luluokalani, the 152nd Boeing 737 airframe, was preparing for another island hop to Honolulu International Airport. Purser Clarabelle Lansing was in charge of the 89 passengers that day. Lansing had been flying for 37 years, beginning as one of Aloha's first flight attendants after graduating from high school. CB was well liked by passengers and colleagues, and she even had appeared in airline advertisements. Jane Sato Tomita and Michelle Honda, both 14-year Aloha employees, assisted Lansing in the cabin. Captain Robert Schornsteiner was assisted on the flight deck by First Officer Madeline Mimi Tompkins, and the pair were joined on the jump seat by an FAA air traffic controller. Passengers boarded gradually and settled in for the short flight. Flight 243 took off from Hilo International Airport at 13:25 Hawaiian Standard Time on April 28, 1988, bound for Honolulu, with 6 crew members and 89 passengers on board. Nothing out of the ordinary was discovered during the pre-departure inspection of the aircraft, which had already completed 3 round-trip flights from Honolulu to Hilo, Maui, and Kauai that day, all of which were uneventful. Meteorological conditions were checked, but no weather advisories were reported along the flight path, according to AirMets or SIGMETs. The aircraft had reached its normal flight altitude of 24,000 feet after a routine takeoff and ascent, when at around 13:48, about 23 nautical miles south-southeast of Kauai on the island of Maui, a small section on the left side of the roof ruptured with a whooshing sound. The captain noticed the aircraft rolling to the left and right, and the controls became loose. The first officer noted gray insulation floating above the cabin. The cockpit door had broken away, revealing the blue sky. The resulting explosive decompression had ripped a large section off of the roof, consisting of the entire top half of the aircraft's skin, extending from just behind the cockpit to the forewing area, a distance of approximately 18.5 feet. Clarabelle CB Lansing, 58, was swept out of the plane while standing near the fifth-row seats. Her body was never found. 8 more people were seriously injured. During the depressurization, all passengers were seated and wearing seatbelts. At the time of the incident, First Officer Tompkins was the pilot operating. Captain Schornsteiner took over the controls and initiated a quick emergency descent. The crew signaled an emergency and made a detour for an emergency landing at Kahului Airport. The left engine failed as the aircraft was on its approach to the airport, and the flight crew wasn't sure if the nose gear had been lowered properly. 13 minutes after the incident, they could still land normally on runway 2. The emergency exit slides were opened as soon as the aircraft touched down, and the passengers rapidly left the vehicle. 8 of the 65 reported injured patients required serious medical attention. Maui didn't have a strategy in place for this kind of catastrophe at the time. Since there were only 2 ambulances on the island, the injured were transported to the hospital in tour vehicles owned by Akami Tours, driven by office staff and mechanics. To transfer the injured, Air traffic control radioed Akami and asked them to send as many of their 15-passenger vans as they could spare to the airport, which was 3 miles away from their base. A triage was set up on the runway by 2 of the Akami drivers who had previously worked as paramedics. The plane was declared written off. The plane could not be repaired, therefore it was disassembled right there. The aircraft also sustained dented and damaged horizontal stabilizers, both of which were hit with flying debris. The aircraft's vertical stabilizer had also been hit with some metal debris, resulting in minor damage. Both engine cowlings and the front ends of the wings had also been harmed. The aircraft's fuselage fragment that was blasted off was never located. The tragedy was caused by metal fatigue, exacerbated by crevice corrosion, according to the results of an investigation by the U.S. National Transportation Safety Board. The airplane, which was 19 years old, operated in a salt and humidity-filled coastal environment. Gil Yamamoto, a passenger, admitted to the investigators that she had seen a breach in the fuselage when she boarded the aircraft, but had not alerted anybody about it. The aircraft's fuselage fragment that was blasted off was never located. The tragedy was caused by metal fatigue, which was exacerbated by crevice corrosion, according to an investigation by the U.S. National Transportation Safety Board, NTSB. The airplane was 19 years old and operated in a salt and humidity-filled coastal environment. The incident aircraft was 152 in line. At the fuselage's lap joint, every 737 built after line 291 had an additional outside layer of skin or doubler sheet. This doubler sheet was not utilized in the manufacture of the involved aircraft. This doubler sheet added 0.91 millimeters or 0.036 inches to the thickness at the lap joint for manufacturing lines 292 and later. Cold bonding had been employed for airplane line 291 and earlier. Fasteners were used to preserve surface contact in the joint, allowing bonding adhesive to transfer weight within the joint. The margins of 0.9 millimeter thick skin panels were joined in this cold bonded junction using a woven scrim fabric soaked with epoxy. Since these epoxy cloths were reactive at room temperature, they were kept in dry ice storage until they were needed for production. After assembly, the bond healed at ambient temperature. The overall weight and production cost were decreased using the cold bonding procedure. It was intended for hoop loads, circumferential loads within the skins brought on by cabin pressurization, to be transferred through the bonded joint rather than the rivets, allowing for the use of lighter, thinner fuselage skin panels without compromising fatigue life. The quality of the inspection and maintenance programs was found to be subpar by the NTSB investigation. It was more challenging to thoroughly check the aircraft's exterior because fuselage inspections were scheduled for the night. The failure mechanism was caused by multiple site fatigue cracking of the skin next to rivet holes along the upper rivet row of the lap joint, and tear strap disbond, which negated the fail-safe features of the fuselage. The fuselage failure also started in the lap joint along S10L. Last, the countersunk lap joint rivet holes and knife edges were present where fatigue cracking first appeared. Lap joint disbonding caused the knife edges to concentrate stresses transmitted through the rivets. In its final crash report, the NTSB came to the following conclusion. The National Transportation Safety Board finds that the failure of Aloha Airlines maintenance program, significant disbonding, and fatigue damage was the likely cause of the accident. This failure ultimately resulted in the failure of the lap joint at S10L and the separation of the fuselage upper lobe. The shortcomings of the FAA, Boeing, and Aloha Airlines maintenance all contributed to the accident, according to one board member who dissented, even though fatigue cracking was unquestionably the likely cause. In an episode of the Canadian television series Mayday, the events of this incident were dramatized with the title Hanging by a Thread. It was later called Air Emergency and Air Disasters in the U.S. and Aircraft Investigation in the U.K. and elsewhere around the world. The flight was also featured in the Science of Disaster special Ripped Apart from Mayday Season 6 in 2007. Nobody can imagine what went through the minds of those unfortunate people on that plane that fateful day. Whatever precautions and safety measures people take, there's always one leak that turns into the biggest of disasters. Let's all hope that never happens to anyone. What are your thoughts on this incident? Was the incident the result of extreme negligence, or was it just a bad day of the passenger? Let us know in the comments section. That's all for today. If you found this video interesting, please give us a thumbs up and don't forget to share the video with your friends and family. Thanks for watching.